Hey everyone, my name is Scruffy. Today I'm gonna present you guys the guide for Cinderbrew Meadery in the War Within. You can find all other dungeon guides and even raid guides here on my YouTube channel. And for all other written guides, like class guides and delve guides, you can check out yourmmo.com. If you want to help out the channel, please consider subscribing and giving the video a like if you're a fan of guides for World of Warcraft and even Path of Exile. And without further ado, let's hop into Cinderbrew Meadery. On your way to the first boss, you will encounter 4 different trash mobs and 1 mini-boss. Venture Co-Patron attacked the tank with Mean Mug, dealing heavy damage and applying a stackable bleeding debuff on the tank. Just beware that there are a lot of these in the first boss room. Hired Muscle cast Throw Chair and throw a chair at a random player to deal damage, and Volatile Keg is a 2-second cast and then channels for 8 seconds that deals fire damage to all players within 50 yards. Tasting Room Attendant uses Cinderbrew Toss at a random player, throwing a glass this time at a random player that deals damage to them, but also other players within 3 yards, and also disorient them. This cast should be made sure to be interrupted. Venture Pyromaniac casts Boiling Flame on a random player, dealing damage in a channel cast on that player that can also be interrupted. To add even more stuff to be interrupted, Erupting Inferno can also be interrupted, and if not, it applies a debuff to a player that deals damage over time in a 5-yard radius around him. The mini-boss you encounter is Chef Shui. Tenderize is an uninterruptible cast that deals damage to all players and knocks them away. High Stakes spawns several swirls that stun players if hit. Brewmaster Aldria is the first boss. Upon reaching 100 energy, Aldria uses Happy Hour. During this time, he is immune to damage. Collect the kegs at the bar and bring them to first the NPCs in the back, indicated by a glowing effect. Afterwards, Crawling Brawl spawns several NPCs breaking into a fight with each other. Coming into contact with these NPCs stuns players for 3 seconds and take heavy damage in that time. Just make sure to dodge these while you're dealing with the regular abilities of the boss. Aldria throws Cinderbrew on several random players, causing them to take damage every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. This also leaves Hot Honey underneath the players. You want to make sure to place these void zones in a coordinated way. Keg Smash deals high damage against the current tank and also leaves some Hot Honey close by in melee range. Move the boss away from the bar counter so players don't run through the Hot Honey. And last, Blazing Belch is a simple frontal cone in the direction of a random player. Deal with all these abilities that require movement without running into the brawling NPCs. You can either go left or right, and this will probably depend on your Bloodlust timing. Going to the right side, we go to Bank Busby. The mobs you encounter are the following. B-Wrangler casts Bazooka in the direction of a player, shooting a laser beam in that direction. They also cast B-Sheer Wrath, enraging himself and nearby bees. This cannot be interrupted, but you can stun this mob. Worker Bee's Shredding Sting is a charge to a random player, dealing damage and leaving a stackable bleeding debuff. Final Sting is cast upon reaching 20% health, dealing very high damage to a random player, if not killed or stunned before it finishes. Royal Jelly Purveyor cast Honey Volley, dealing damage to all players and slowing them by 70% if not interrupted. Rain of Honey spawns many swirls which deal damage on impact to players that are inside of it. Venture Co Honey Harvester have the Swarming Surprise ability. This causes melee players to take damage and increases the damage of Swarming Surprise by 40%. This makes this enemy your primary target because this debuff can stack. Beeswax creates a large brown circle around the Harvester, dealing damage to players and stunning them if they got struck. You will encounter several packs, including a mix of all of these mobs. The main mechanic of Bank Busby's boss fight is the Snack Time ability. The boss spawns several kegs, which deal damage on impact. These kegs spawn ravenous cinder bees every 30 seconds as long as the kegs are alive. These bees also jump to random players with Shredding Sting, but become friendly at 1 health. Players can mount them and enters the mounting interface. When pressing 1, it shoots the bee and kills the bee, but also destroys all remaining kegs that are struck by it. This is the key mechanic of this encounter. Otherwise, Fluttering Wing is a channeling cast, dealing damage to all players over 2 seconds and pushing them away. This just has to be healed up. The boss applies the tank with Honey Marinade, dealing heavy damage in a 6-yard radius around the tank and leaving flaming honey on the floor. Tanks should place this away and then move the boss and bees away from it, otherwise the bees will heal themselves and gain 50% haste while they remain inside of it. After this boss fight, you go back to the first room and then to the opposite side to Ipa. The Venture Co Pyromaniac that you encounter are the same as before, requiring 2 of their casts to be interrupted. Flavor Scientists throw a failed badge, like a totem, that casts Explosive Brew, dealing heavy damage after 10 seconds to your whole party. They also cast Rejuvenating Honey, applying a heal over time on 1 enemy. Either interrupt this cast or purge the buff away from them. Taste Tester throws 3 samples on a random player, dealing just damage to them, but they mostly just attack the tank with regular attacks. Careless Hobgoblin charge in the direction of a random player with Reckless Delivery. This charge is very far, so make sure to position yourself towards a wall when you are targeted. They spawn a few brew drops upon death, which are not very interesting enemies to deal with. After killing the 3 packs at the boss location, Reaper will spawn and engage into fight. His main mechanic of the fight is spouting Stout. This deals damage to all players over 8 seconds and spawns brew drops, little ads that are running towards the boss. When these ads die, they leave oozing honey on the floor, a void zone that deals damage to players inside of it. These void zones shrink over time and cause a new brew drop to spawn one more time. If they live too long, they gain a 200% buff on their movement speed. If the boss ever touches any brew drop, it causes them to explode and grant the boss a 20% absorb shield, a fifth of his maximum health. Besides that mechanic, Burning Fermentation is a despellable debuff on a random player, dealing damage every 2 seconds for 16 seconds. And last, Bottom's Uppercut deals heavy damage to the tank and knocks them away. Mount the bees in the first boss room, and they fly you to the last boss, Goldie Baron Bottom. The 4 mini bosses you encounter have the downward trend ability, leaping to a random player and applying a bleeding debuff on players in the 5 yards radius of the impact. When one of them dies, other mini bosses gain a 10% damage buff but also heal themselves up. Do not try to cleave them, but focus one down after another. Coming now to the last boss. Spread the Love is now here the key mechanic. Goldie stomps the ground to deal damage on all players and also spawns several Cinderbrew barrels and volatile barrels. When these barrels detonate, they go Cinder Boom and send fire waves in all 4 directions. The volatile barrels will apply a stackable debuff Cindering Wounds, dealing damage over 6 seconds. These barrels are differently colored and you should not destroy too many of them at the same time, because that debuff can stack. When she reaches 100 energy, she uses Let It Hail, which explodes all remaining barrels, causing probably a wipe if too many volatile barrels were still remaining, or at least requiring strong healing cooldowns. To get rid of these barrels, we have 2 more mechanics. Burning Ricochet is a 5-yard circle around several players, dealing damage to players and barrels when this debuff expires. Make sure if you're affected that you're gonna clear a few of these barrels. Beware that the fire waves are spawning out of them still. Cash Cannon is a frontal cone in the direction of a tank, dealing damage to players' truck and destroying any barrels hit. Just beware that this does not destroy barrels that are far away, but only within like 15 yards in front of the boss.